Welcome to So and So, brought to you by Bernina, made to create. I'm Meg Goodman, and you're about to enjoy a casual conversation with a special member of the sewist and quilting community. A conversation about how they got started, what inspires them, what excites them, and their connection to this community. Our guest today is Lina Owen, founder of BlueBelle Designs and co-owner of Quilting with Latinas. Lina was born and raised in Colombia, coming to the U.S. in 2006. She went to school in Bogota for international business. Her mother-in-law taught her to quilt, as did a little help from YouTube, and the fact that she's only been quilting for 3 years is remarkable because she has made great strides in her skills. With a mission to expand quilting resources for the Hispanic community, Lina is currently working on a bilingual quilting book. Through her efforts, she wants to inspire and empower quilters to connect with their heritage while fostering creativity and collaboration in the quilting world. Hello, Lina, and welcome to So and So.
Hello, Meg. Thank you so much for this invitation.
Oh, it's great to have you. You and I have actually met not that long ago up in Madison at the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show, and we had just a little snippet of a conversation. But this is going to be great because we're going to be able to drill down into your life, your quilting, and your dreams. So I want to just start off. You've only been quilting for a few years. My question is, how did you decide to learn how to quilt? And tell us how your mother-in-law helped.
Well, yes, that is correct. I only been sewing since the pandemic. I feel that that was my gift the pandemic gave me. Um, and I always been very creative. So when I went to school, like elementary and things like that, in my country, they teach you how to do cross stitch and how to mend and things like that. And you met me, so I'm pretty tiny, very, very tiny. So my mom was always very afraid of like um, having me learn a sewing machine. Just she just felt that I was gonna get hurt.
Hmm,
But I come from
okay.
a family of sewists. So my grandma sewed. My one of my aunts was a fashion designer, and my mother also studied fashion design in my country. So I come from a line of sewists. Um, but um, I just never got to it, but I always had the love for the arts. So
Hmm.
during school, I was just very artistic. I learned how to draw and I paint with pastels and oils and things like that. Uh, but I never really got to the sewing machine. So then when I was in high school and deciding my career, I had either I go for like graphic design or something artistic, or study something that will support my parents' business. My parents were entrepreneurs, they had their own businesses. And so that kind of bringing the heritage of keeping the business going was kind of my fuel. And then I decided to go for international business. And that kind of like left my art behind and kind of dormant in a way. And then
Hmm.
we came to the United States and my parents had to sell the businesses. Um, and that just kind of went away. I continued with my career, and then I met my husband. And my mother-in-law was always giving gifting me like quilted bags or quilts for our home. And I was always interested, and for some reason, I never really told her like, hey. And one day I said, hey, I really want to learn how to use a sewing machine. That's always been an interest of mine. So one Christmas, she surprises me with a sewing machine and everything that I need. At that point, I didn't know that what she gifted me was the highest quality of everything, like cutting mat, the scissors, the rotary cutter. Like I wasn't aware of what all of these actually meant.
Hmm.
And so she gifted me this sewing machine. So at first she said, well, you go in, get some fabric and do maybe like a tablecloth or something easy, which is just like straight stitching. And I did a couple of those, but I never really had the time. And so that's kind of that. And then years go by, and then pandemic comes in, right? And I said, okay, we need masks, and we can't go anywhere. And so I said, I have the sewing machine. I want to learn. I'm gonna ask my mother-in-law to just kind of get me acquainted with the sewing machine once again, and I started making masks. And once I got comfortable with the sewing machine, I said, you know what? I want you to teach me how to quilt. And she was like, okay, the machine I got you was not for quilting. It was just for like this. And I'm like, it's fine. I mean, like, if I really want it and if I get into it, then I'll go and we get a new machine that is for quilting. And she's like, okay, that sounds good. It's like, I don't want you to stop you from teaching me just because I don't have the correct sewing machine. And we gotta keep this in mind that we are in this era of being afraid of being in touch with people because we don't know and we're being very careful and that kind of thing. And so um, quilting really got me through all of that anxiety that was going um, through that moment in time.
Hmm.
And where I live in a very little town, and I worked in a suburbs of Madison. So I was having like 2 hours drive every day before pandemic. So I I said, what am I going to do with this time that I now have extra? So that's where sewing came in. And that is history. Then she taught me how to quilt, just like the basics. And um, before pandemic, I never really used YouTube a lot. I didn't have a lot of time to like learn a new skill or anything. But I saw my husband and my son really consuming a lot of content. And then I say, okay, I'm going to just kind of look into it and start learning from videos and things like that. Um, and then now is up to I am today.
So on YouTube, are there any specific teachers that really stand out to you that really helped you learn how to quilt?
Yes, I mean, Missouri Star was a big one. Um, love Jenny and all of her content. Um,
Hmm.
I also learned how to make bags through YouTube.
Hmm.
And so that's another side of things that I love. Like I said, that I have two loves, quilting and bag making. And I cannot do those interchangeably just because quilting can be very daunting. Like when you make a really big quilt, which is what I love to make. I love to piece really big quilts. And those take time.
Hmm.
And I like to get into faster projects that you can finish in a day or two, which that's where bags come in. So I always go into like I make a quilt and I make a bag, kind of a thing, so that I get that kind of dose of dopamine faster. Um, and um, and then I have a lot of bag makers that I follow and that I love how they teach. Um, and Melanie Hamm, that unfortunately she's not with us anymore. Um, she taught me how to do like simple zipper pouches, and that's how she I got introduced into bag making was through Melanie Hamm's YouTube channel. And I follow also, oh my God, Kimberly Jolly from Fat Quarter Chop. I love her videos. They're completely different. I mean, Jenny and Kimberly are like the opposite spectrum of things. Kimberly she speaks more softly. She's not as fast. She's more meticulous. She is very precise, and that's just how she likes to do things. Jenny, at the other hand, is more of like, I just want you to learn how to quilt, and it doesn't have to be perfect. She is a fast sewer. Um, she just says if it doesn't go, just go with the flow, kind of a thing. So it's very interesting to see that, you know, there's so many resources out there for quilting that it just kind of speaks to other personalities and other ways to kind of learn how to do things. So I find that fascinating, and that's where I come in because that's where, as Hispanic, Latino, I'm looking at this, and all the majority of the material that I find on YouTube that is free for people to consume is mostly in English. And I said, why is this not in Spanish? I mean, why don't we have this broad spectrum of resources that can be given to the community? And so that's where everything comes in. And I started talking to my husband, and I said, I just don't understand it. Why don't we have these resources in Spanish? And that's where that kind of my why comes in. And I start working and say, okay, so I love this art. This art has given me so much. It has helped me heal a great deal, heal scars that were created in the past for difficult circumstances. And like I talk to people, it kind of stitches your soul back together. And I want to give that to my people, to my community, and don't feel that they cannot quilt just because all of the resources that we have out there are in English.
Well, let's talk about this for a minute. You are creating a bilingual quilting book. Um, Tell us a little bit about this and when we can expect to be able to get a hold of that book.
Yes, and so the book is going to be coming up next fall. So that's so exciting. And I feel that, I mean, I live in the US. My family is in the US. So I want to bring this idea and infuse the Hispanic culture into the quilting, right? And this is where the bilingual comes around. I want to be able to give to both of my worlds. I live in the US and my kids are Americans, but I'm also Colombian. And so being able to join them together and have a book that can serve both um, cultures together is just like a dream come true. And so I'm co-authoring this book uh, with Laura Raquel Duran, which she has become like family to me. It's been an amazing experience that we met and we both share this love of being able to bring um, enjoying or Latino culture and join them together and just really bring that we currently have a lot of Latinos within the quilting community and that we don't even realize it. We have Veruschka Zarate from Pride and Joy Quilting, which is super well known for her amazing foundation paper piecing patterns and work that she does. She's impeccable with it. And she's our Latino talent. We have Vanessa, the Crafty Gemini, that also has Latino roots, and it's amazing of what she does. Completely different people. We have Carolina Oneto from Chile that also is amazing with her style of quilting. So we currently have so many talent that is Hispanic, but we don't recognize that they can bring this talent or they can bring their knowledge into our culture.
That is a lot to look forward to. Lina, what brought you to this country?
Um, well, so my parents decided to come to the US. It's not a secret that Colombia suffered from a great deal of insecurity due to the guerrillas. And unfortunately, my family was victim of that. And it was a very difficult situation for my parents. See, because you're leaving everything behind. And um, it got to the point where my father just couldn't stand it anymore and couldn't really afford it anymore to be paying this amount of money to the guerrillas just to keep us safe. And so he had a friend in Fort Myers, Florida, and said, you know what? Um, I understand because he suffered the same, and this is a way forward. And so he equipped my dad with the knowledge that he needed to come to the States with the status that we needed to be able to have a immigrant status that would eventually go into becoming residents. And so that's why we came. I first came to the US, into Florida. I lived in Florida for 3 years and then moved to Wisconsin. And so that's
Hmm.
how my life kind of changed drastically, because I came to the US at the age of 18. Um, I was already studying international business, but I wasn't fluent in the language. I could read it, I could speak it a little bit, uh, but I couldn't really listen to it. And so my listening part of it was still very rusty. So it was a challenge, but we persevered it as a family together. And yeah, that's kind of my story.
It's quite a change from Florida to Wisconsin.
Yes, that
Big change.
that is it is a huge change,
Sure,
and I have so many stories for like, what do I say, for like experiencing the north for the first time,
sure.
like from seeing the snow on top of the cars, and everybody's like, I was like, oh look at the car, and everybody's like, what? And I was like, look at all the snow on top of the car, and it's like, yeah, that's what happens when the snows, and you take those simple, tiny little things for like, for granted, or the people that lives in the north, or that they have rough winters, or like wearing a really heavy jacket. Like my first winter, I hated my winter jacket. It just hurt my shoulders so much. Again, I'm a very tiny, tiny little lady, and so that jacket was so heavy and it hurt my shoulders so much, and I didn't want to wear it, but I wore it all winter. So the next winter came around, I was like, oh, I don't want to wear that jacket. It's going to hurt my shoulders. But it didn't, because my body was already used to
Hmm.
and equipped to that. And, like changing the way you dress, everything that you don't think, because when you're raised and born in the North, you cannot go with it, and is nature.
Hmm.
But then when you go in and you have to learn all these little things, like driving in the snow and all those things. And I mean, my sister still lives in Florida, and my brother is in California. And so they don't really have that kind of weather. So there's like, when they come here in the winter, they say, you're insane. Like, what are you living here? And I'm like, well, after a while, you just get used to it and you learn to love.
Sure.
I love the Midwest. But one thing I want to say, as an immigrant, and after you pick up and you leave your extended family aside and behind you, um, and you're really good friends for many, many years, I always felt that void for so many years.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I became a quilter that that void kind of dissipated a bit.
Hmm.
I never have felt so welcome and so supported and so loved in any other community that the quilting community. And that's something that it is why I feel that quilting needs to spread a little more into my Hispanic community, because it's just beyond a hobby, it's beyond an art, is is a life, it's a community, it's a support that every human being needs,
Hmm.
and it feels so good, and it just helps your soul so much.
It is about community. Now, during all of this, you founded your company, BlueBelle Designs.
Mhm.
Tell us about BlueBelle and how you came up with a name.
Yeah, well, BlueBelle Designs just came up with that. I said, there's not a lot of resources out there, and I want to merge this, and I came with this idea. I want to be able to use my business knowledge and my love for quilting, and make it and transform it into my career. And it's been a journey.
Hmm.
I'm still in the process, and I'm not even close to completely make it and say I'm a full-time quilter. And that's my dream. Um, but my favorite color is blue, and my daughter's middle name is Belle, And so I joined them together. And then when I was looking things up, I realized that is also the name of a wildflower.
Mm-hmm.
And um, for me, flowers have a very special meaning. I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I live with multiple sclerosis. And through all of these health challenges that I have gone through at a very young age, flowers reminded me of that, of how strong a human being can be and how they can adapt
Mm-hmm.
to change, to very strong, difficult circumstances. And, beauty comes about in rough times. It's like a diamond. It's under pressure that it becomes this precious stone. So I thought I was just perfectly fitted, and then I stuck with it.
You mentioned your cancer and surviving that. You mentioned your MS. How's your health now, Lina? How you doing?
It's pretty good. I mean, um, it's not always 100%. And with all of the things that I want to do, I still work full time and I still run my business and creating this book and I working a lot of hours on a day. And I love my family, so my kids and and my husband come first, above all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that overall, I'm pretty stable and I'm very grateful for that. But I am in the mentality of that I don't want to leave anything on the table. So I live every day of like, I want to go to bed and I want to say, if tonight is my last night, I want to feel serenity in the fact that I was the best I could with what I had ending that night.
Well, you mentioned leaving nothing on the table. And in addition to all of this, you are also a podcaster. You released your first episode of your podcast on October 20th. And you also co host with Laura Duran, who you mentioned earlier in our conversation. So tell us about your podcast.
Yes. So Las Quilteras podcast is actually the revamp of my initial podcast. So my initial podcast came about because I took a course to learn how to write quilting patterns with Elizabeth Chappell. She's a designer of patterns and fabrics for our gallery fabrics. And I educated myself to continue my education in quilting. And so I learned how to write the patterns and how to use Adobe Illustrator, which is the industry standard program, to create patterns. And she has a podcast that's called Craft to Career. Um, and that kind of ma- got me thinking of there's not really any podcast out there in Spanish for quilting. There's none. I was the first one. And so on November of 2022, I launched Descubre Quilting, which is the translation is Discover Quilting um, in Spanish. And I made 62 episodes with Descubre Quilting. Um, but then I kind of hit a wall and I knew that at some point I needed to transform the podcast to something that was more everlasting. And that's
Hmm.
where the revamping comes with Las Culteras. With uh, I know that quilting is about community, and I wanted to create a podcast that was more driven to that. And meeting Laura and having create that relationship with her was a no-brainer for me. Where I proposed to her and I said, "I want you to join my podcast, and I want us to revamp the school quilting and make it something more everlasting." And so we went back and forth with a lot of different names, and then we came up with Las Culteras.
So, what topics and maybe some of the guests that will be coming up do we have to look
Oh,
forward to?
yes. I mean, we're going to be talking, obviously, everything about quilting and art, and we just wanted to be very crafty in a way. And we're going to be bringing um, Latino speaking artists that are currently in the industry. Um, and the previous episodes of Discovery Quilting will continue to be there as well, right? So the people can continue to listen to the episodes that I already recorded. I already interview a lot of people in the industry, like the owners of our gallery fabrics. I don't know if everybody knows, but they're from Argentina and they're wonderful. Pat Bravo and Walter Bravo, and Vanessa Vargas from the Crafty Gemini that I mentioned, Veruschka, and many more that have already been there. Priscilla Bianchi, which is an artist, a quilt artist, and she was highlighted in QuiltCon this year as one of the international quilters to be watching out about. And so, yeah, and that's kind of like the format. We just wanted to be very casual, um, but something that we can that people can just listen while they're so and they want to learn a little bit more about what is going on in the quilting community and in the quilting industry as a business and so on.
We'll look forward to that. Is it in both English and Spanish?
For now, we're gonna put it in Spanish only. We continue to like explore the idea of like still bringing English speaking people into the podcast and just
Hmm.
kind of translating as we go and as the conversation goes along. So we're still kind of exploring if we just want to have because if we have another podcast that is in English only, that has a lot of work to the mix.
Hmm.
So we're still kind of exploring ideas and see how we can make the English part of it work.
Now, you recently hosted the very first Spanish retreat at Missouri Star Quilt Company. That sounds pretty cool. Tell us about that.
Oh my God, Meg, that was like I can tell you that I cried when I saw 26 people coming from South America to attend, and some from the U.S. as well, um, to attend this retreat. It was just amazing. Um, it it was an amazing opportunity. So once I s- I started getting this little itch, I want to say that I wanted to bring more resources to my community in Spanish. And it's hard. I am going against the grain. I understand that this is a market that's not established. We don't have numbers. We don't have proof that this is actually going to work. So this is something new. It's not like going into and saying, "Oh, I'm just bringing a new technique," or bringing, this is a completely different way of thinking. And for businesses, I understand as a business professional, I know that um, there is investment. There, you gotta look at the return on investment. You got to look at the strategy. Does it fit into their strategy? Are they looking into expanding into new markets and so on and so forth, right? So I
Hmm.
have reached out to many companies and said, I don't have the infrastructure myself. I'm very conscious. And I want just to help you. I want to aid you to pitch on to tap into this new uh, into this new market, obviously coming with not solid data, not solid numbers. And this is one of the reasons why I want my book to launch as soon as it does, even though I'm under crazy deadlines. And and like we just said, we just signed contract this year and we're launching it this year. So you can only imagine that we're working in overdrive. But I feel that this is really going to put it in writing, the reach that this is going to have.
Sure.
And so I reached out to Alan Doan to go back to the retreat many years ago. And I'm still in conversations with Alan, which is the owner of Missouri Star Quilt Company. And then I said to him, like, hey, I want to run a retreat just for Spanish speakers. Can you get me in touch with the people that run your retreat? And he's like, of course. And let me know if you come because I want to meet you. And so I started and he put me in touch with all of the people. And that's how in November of last year, we had the first retreat, and it was just amazing. It was the most amazing experience I have had, and I learned so much, and it was just incredible.
Do you have plans for future retreats like this?
Yes, I do. I do have plans, and I'm still working on some details and things like that. So I'll be announcing. Um, like right now, the economy is a very tough moment right now, and so I feel that um, that we need a little break, but I'm confident that maybe by 2026 I'll be able to come up with something.
Now, you also have your first Latino Sew Along, which you're going to debut next year.
Yes.
What is that? Tell us about that.
So we have so many samplers and patterns that professionals come together and do these sew alongs and to give content to people and to continue to grow their audience. And so I said, why aren't we doing the same thing? Right? And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
I just my podcast had allowed me to get to know so many people in the industry, right? And so I just said, hey, is anybody interested in participating in this? And just be Latinos, only Latinos, creating these quilt blocks and putting together this sampler that is already known in the industry. It's not any new format. Um, and so that's what we're going to be doing. It's a sew along that is going to be. We're still deciding if it's going to be bilingual, um, but
Hmm.
obviously 100% for sure that all the instructions will be in Spanish. And we are just designing a whole quilt with his, and all the quilt blocks are with Latino inspiration from any designer, whether it was through their country of origin or anything that they wanted to highlight for the Latino culture. So yeah, it's gonna be so much fun.
Now, let me ask, are there special ways in which the quilts crafted by Latino creators might be different?
Yes, I feel that we are so colorful and loud. My husband always complains of when I speak Spanish. He's like, "Why are you always yelling?" I'm like, "I'm not yelling.
It's just a natural
It's our
tone, right?
natural." And it's like, when you speak English, you don't yell. And I'm like, "Well, because this is just how English is." Like,
It's the passion, right? That's
yes.
it.
And so that's what we bring to our quilting is vibrant, is loud, is unusual, is it goes so much into the modern. So if I see a lot of or Latino quilters are very modern quilters because of the infuse of vibrancy in those saturated colors that we tend to choose, right? And the way that um, we like the shapes to be, and the use of curves, or the simplicity, or the super maximalism that we want to portray on a quilt. So that's kind of what
Hmm.
um, we have that more tendency or more into being the improvisation type of quilting, right? Because we just have so much color and ideas and history to bring to our quilting. And if you look on the quilts for Latinas, like we have Suspicio Katie Cliven, which is amazing with her use of curves and her unique quills that she comes up with, is it brings that Latino flair um, that is just a staple of who we are as a community.
Now, in addition to any language accommodation, are there other things that are needed for the Latino quilting community to grow?
Yes, besides having a lot of the resources, is also having access to all of the notions and things like that. It's amazing because I have not only interviewed quilters in the U.S., but I interview quilters all around South America. And what the common thing is that they don't have access to all of the things that we do, so they get by with what they have. So they're quilting as if the quilters did it back in or um, 19th century kind of a thing, right? They're making their own templates with paper, and they they really try to sew not necessarily with a quarter of an inch allowance, and they're not necessarily using quilting cotton because the quilting cotton that we know of is not very accessible in other countries, right? And so they quilt with other types, like sometimes they quilt with silk. As that can be very challenging, and so that's kind of the thing that I also want to be able to help, is that to show that there is a need to bring, and for those companies that are making these products to make it more accessible, and then they start putting those products more accessible in our South American countries, Colombia, Argentina, Peru,
Mm-hmm.
Mexico, and so on and so forth.
Lina, you mentioned earlier in our conversation that your dream is to be a full-time quilter. So let me ask, what's next for you?
Oh, what is next for me? To be honest, I'm just going with the flow, Meg.
Okay.
Uh, I am staying true to my wife, um, and that's what I feel that we are making such a great progress, and catching the attention of the quilting community right now, and saying, yes, can we help? What can we do? And just be in acceptance and having the opportunity to participate in podcasts like yours, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great deal of help, because then it's going to be reaching to those um, quilters out there that are bilingual, and they say, oh my goodness, there's going to be a bilingual, I'm going to be able to share this with my aunt that doesn't speak English. And then she likes to sew, and she would be interested in sewing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like talking to the organizers of the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show. And that's one thing that I want to say in this podcast, is that we do want to start putting Spanish classes into the quilt shows. I feel that that's going to bring more awareness and bring in more availability to have classes that are in Spanish, and that the communities can come and say, I'm able and I feel comfortable to take this class.
Mm-hmm. In our conversation today, I asked you a lot of questions. Is there any question I didn't ask that you wish I had?
Ooh, I don't think so. No, I think you cover a lot, or we cover a lot.
As did you, and you have a lot going on, Lina. This has just been wonderful. And let me ask, if any of our listeners would like to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I'm in my Instagram. So the book, I invite everybody that the book is going to be. Laura and I created a company that is called Quilting with Latinas, right? So that's where our bilingual patterns are going to be in. Um, so Quilting with Latinas is its sole mission is to create bilingual content so that we can continue to incorporate our Latino communities. And so our goal is to continue to bring patterns, not just books, and working with companies to start creating bilingual content. And so I encourage every listener to please follow us on Quilting with Latinas. Our website is going to be live here pretty soon, and probably live by the time this episode airs. So go ahead and follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and YouTube, because we're also going to have tutorials in Spanish, and some in English. And every now and then, my daughter is going to be popping in and giving videos for the kids as well, because she is full on into this whole sewing thing as well.
We have a lot to look forward to from you. Lina, it's been so wonderful to talk to you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Well, there you have it, another story about someone just like you, someone for whom sewing and quilting is so much more than a hobby. It's a way of life and a connection to something bigger. If you know someone you think has an outstanding story, a story that should be shared on this podcast, please drop me a note to meg@soandsopodcast.com or just complete the form on our website. Be sure to subscribe to, review, and rate this podcast on your favorite platform, and visit our website, soandsopodcast.com, for more information about today's and all of our guests. That's SEWANDSO podcast.com. And finally, I want to thank Bernina for making this program possible. I'm Meg Goodman, and I look forward to you joining us next time on So and So.